Hi everybody, this is a solution to 2014 AP Computer Science paper question 3. This is part A. Write the constructor method for the seating chart class. The constructor initializes the seats instance variable to a two-dimensional array with the given number of rows and columns. Okay, so if we look back through the paper, this is the seating chart class. This is the instance variable, seats, which is a seating chart class variable, and the constructor method of this class will initialize seats to be a two-dimensional array of students with the correct number of rows and columns. So let's do that first. In the seating chart constructor method, we've already got our variable here, but now we're just going to initialize it. Rows first and columns next, I recommend. Okay. Oops, we forgot to put our parameters in here. It is list in the question. I'm just going to use array list. Okay, so let's just change that to row and col. Okay, we're good to go. So we've initialized a new two-dimensional array with the correct number of rows and the correct number of columns. What we're going to do now is try and get every student in this list into this two-dimensional array. So to process a two-dimensional array, we could use a nested for loop. Let's go in row order. I'm not sure if this is going to work. We'll talk about it as we go through. So we're going to go through the 2D array. We'll visit each row, and then when we visit each row, we will visit each column. I'm not sure if that's the best way to do it. The example says that the first student will go into the first column, column 0. Then the second student is also in column 0, and the third student is in column 0. We're going by columns this time, not by rows. So that adds a little bit of complication. So I'm going to visit the first column, and then for every column, I'm going to visit the row. That might work. So we visit column 0, and then we visit column 0, row 0, column 0, row 1, column 0, row 2, etc. Now to step through this array list, I'm going to create another variable to help me do that. I'm going to call it list index, and I'm going to assign it a value of 0. Now then, let's just think about what we're doing here. We're going to say seats ij is going to be assigned student list, which is an array list, remember. This is a list, so we've got to use methods dot get list index. This is the variable I set up to help me step through this list. Boom. And then just update list index. List index plus plus. So the first time we come into the for loop, list index is 0, so we get the first member of the student list. Then we update list index, and the next time we come, we're going to get 1. And then we're going to get 2, and then we're going to get 3, and then we're going to get 4. What happens if there are not very many students in the student list? I'm going to try and get things that aren't there. That's a problem. So I do need to include a little bit of extra logic. If list index is less than student list dot size, I want to do these two things. Does that make sense? Okay, so that is a solution to the first part of this problem. Part B asks us to code the seating chart method getAbsenceCount, and there is a parameter num think it's was it num absences? Allowed absences. So this is remove absent students. Oh, I see. Not get absence count. What am I thinking about? Remove absent students. And then the integer is allowed absences. So if a student has an absence count which is greater than the allowed absences, then we're going to replace that student with null. So again, let's create a for loop to loop through the two-dimensional array. We don't have to go in column order this time, we can go in row order. Now our two-dimensional array is called seats, and seats.length will tell us how many rows there are. And then the nested for loop. And to get the number of columns for each row, we can do seats I.length. That will tell us how many columns there are for each row that we're currently processing. Now we just want to do a quick check and make sure that the student in the current position that we're processing isn't null, because there are nulls in that two-dimensional array. We just want to say, if you're not null, we're going to try and grab your absence count. Okay, but we need to check for nulls first. So if seats ij doesn't equal null, it means we can do some processing. If seats ij, remember that's a student object, and every student object has a getAbsenceCount method. If that is greater than the allowed absences, which is the parameter here, then seats ij, which is a student object, will be assigned null. And that, oh, and we need to count as well, don't we? We need to return the count. So int count equals 0. Every time we remove someone, we update the count. And the final thing we do, after we've done all the processing in those for loops, that's all finished now, the final thing we do is return the count. And that is a solution to part B of this problem.